Connor, your favorite WrestleMania.
WrestleMania X8.
The following year.
From the Sky Dome.
Were you there?
No.
No, okay.
Sure. I was 5.
So fun story about 18 before we get into it. I went and saw a house show in September 2001, middle of the Invasion angle, and the main event was like the APA with Undertaker. Like, it was a decent card. After the show, we're driving from the Metro Center. We went and grabbed a bite to eat, but we were driving from the Metro Center home to New Brunswick, and we passed this bus, and this bus is loaded with every worker from the card. They're going to the airport, we assume. So we pull to the airport and meet a couple of the wrestlers, and we're annoying fucking marks. What are you going to do? But unbeknownst to us, they all went from the Metro Center to the airport very quickly to get on a plane and fly to Toronto, because the next day they announced WrestleMania X8 in Toronto. That's why they were all getting on a plane. Probably not for all those guys, but I know Taker was at that announcement. So, yeah, that's my WrestleMania X8 earliest memory.
That's pretty cool.
So, Connor, this is your favorite. Go into details here.
All right. One of my favorite matches of all time for absolutely no reason other than the fact that they were two of my favorite wrestlers at the time, Rob Van Dam versus William Regal.
It's a solid match.
One thing about me, I will die on this hill. I think William Regal is one of the best technical wrestlers of all time.
No, you're completely right there.
I'm going to agree with you there. Phenomenal.
Like, he does not get the credit he deserves, and he's an even better commissioner. Like, him versus RVD, I don't think me as a kid was like, oh, that'd be a really cool match. And then you watch it and you're like, holy shit, they only wrestled for 6 minutes, but like got all of their shit in. Like the brass knuckles, the fucking everything.
Yeah.
DDP versus Christian, they did that fucking stupid thing where like Christian would always be like, it's not a good thing. Oh no, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And then fucking
that was DDP that was doing that, huh?
Right, yeah, he beat Christian and did it, but they did that stupid thing where like Christian was from Florida because they were in Toronto and he was a heel. That stupid ass, like, oh, I'm gonna stay somewhere else so my hometown hates me. Like they needed any more reason than to hate Christian.
Yeah.
Maven versus Goldust.
See, I was gonna mention that was an ongoing backstage storyline, is the Adventures of the Hardcore title, and how the Hurricane won it and Molly Holly, and then Christian won it before getting rolled up by Maven, and Maven jumps in his taxi and he leaves with the Hardcore title, just like the night started. There are things that the WWF got right with the Hardcore title, and then when they tried to repeat that with the 24/7 title, it failed miserably.
Yeah, well, the Hardcore title, I think it was just, they had so many, like, not to say that they didn't now, but, like, they had so many guys that were so good that were just, there was no room for them. So, like, you had your, like, I know people who loved Hurricane. So, like, for him to win the Hardcore title, it's like, oh, you know, he still has a job. Good for him. There he is. But the Hardcore title got stale by the time they got rid of it, because everybody had won it like 4 times.
Yeah. Later on that year, they get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm terrible with dates.
Yeah, it eventually makes his way to JBL, where he has an old, I forget if it was a European, it was an old smoking skull belt that he put a Texas license plate or something like that over it. And then when Tommy Dreamer wins it, he uses an old European belt and he puts a New York license plate over it. It just got into this weird thing, and then eventually
hardcore.
That's hardcore. There, eventually, it just gets unified with the Intercontinental title, just like the European title did. And then the Intercontinental title gets unified with the World Heavyweight title. But we're still on WrestleMania X8. Keep going, Connor.
Kurt Angle versus Kane. I honestly do not remember this match. And I've watched that show so many times, and I think I just did not care about Kurt Angle.
The only thing I remember about this match is Angle got the win with a roll-up. and I believe he held the ropes or something like that. It's one of those things where, hey, I got nothing for you. I got nothing for you. How about you two? Like for Kurt Angle at that point in time, it was almost like thrown together. I don't know. Kurt is so good, but you think he might have took that as an insult. And Kane too. It's Kane. He's one of the best gimmick men ever.
Well, I mean, like, I think the only time I ever loved Kurt Angle was when he fought at SummerSlam against The Rock and Triple H, because I didn't want either one of them to win. And I was like, oh yeah, Kurt Angle can make it so I have to pick between these two guys.
And didn't The Rock
end up winning that Kurt one? Angle. Yeah.
Really?
I've never really been a big Kurt Angle fan.
I've liked Kurt Angle a lot.
If I hear one more time that guy won the fucking gold medal with a broken freaking neck, I'm gonna break my neck.
It worked. It worked.
It worked, but like, it's a shame that I just don't think I liked him when I was younger. I loved Kurt Angle on TNA.
Kurt Angle,
Main Event Mafia and all that shit. I loved that. Ate that shit up. But
yeah,
like early on, I was like 5. Maybe that's why I didn't like him. I mean, I was 5. He was an American 5-year-old from Canada. You know, maybe guys just like, I don't like that guy. Undertaker versus defeats Ric Flair. What a fucking match.
This is the first time they ever acknowledged that there's a streak. They're like Jim Ross, I believe, says, you know, Undertaker is 9-0 at WrestleMania. If he gets this one, he's in the double digits. And even at the end, when he beats Ric Flair, he like starts with his thumb, opens up all his fingers, does the same thing on the other hand, and he just has his hands up. 10. I'm 10-0. That's where it started.
Yeah, man, I love Ric Flair. All right, but like,
I don't.
This should have been Ric Flair's like last match. Like this, should be like 23 years later.
That is funny.
100%.
But man, he got the absolute piss kicked out of him in this match, and he took it like a champ.
He did.
Not my favorite Undertaker. I was never a big fan of the Undertaker on the bike. Like, I'm always strictly an Undertaker. American Badass, good for you. You have an American Badass in Kurt Angle. All right, move on. Don't need two. We need the Dark Lord Undertaker. Thank you. One of my, this is probably my top like 25 matches of all time. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Scott Hall.
Okay.
Love Scott Hall. Just because I like both the rest. Oh, sorry, I forgot Edge and Booker T.
Edge and Booker T, the feud over shampoo. You guys remember that? The Japanese shampoo commercial?
Vaguely.
That was their feud. Who gets the Japanese shampoo commercial?
That seems very Booker T-esque, yes.
Edge, though? This is like a couple of years later, he's your world champion.
It's kind of crazy on this card how many guys are still actively involved with wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, wait till we get to mine. You'll see. You'll see how much there isn't.
So Stone Cold and Scott Hall. Love them both. Great match.
Yeah. Not my favorite match with these two guys, but it's special to you. Damn it.
This whole card is just like, every time I watch this, I'm like, it's like watching it for the first time. But yeah,
and
big
there's
Stone Cold guy,
two,
big Scott Hall guy.
Yeah, there's the two big matches on this card.
Well, there's two big ones, and then there's even two more before them. Well, one in
Let me know.
But Billy and Chuck, I love.
That's right.
Billy and Chuck. Yeah. Billy and Chuck as a tag team. Like looking back, they really got into the like gay couple thing really early on in WWF. But it was always like, are they together? Are they not? But everybody kind of knew that that's what they were implying. And these guys, like, it's fucking Billy Gunn. He's good. Chuck Palumbo, he was okay. But the APA, Dudley Boys, Hardys, I mean, with those three teams in there, especially the last two, you can't really have a bad match.
Yeah. I
mean, you can now, but not then. Yeah. Rock and Hulk Hogan. Fuck, man. Just the entrances from this alone were like fucking 15 minutes long. It felt like it took Hogan 10 minutes to get to the ring.
They glorified this match as one of the greatest of all times. The match isn't anything special. That crowd made that match special. Amazing.
Well, they back then, like, I think people forget too. It wasn't about like, oh, this match is going to be great. It was about who it was. Because, like, well, if it hadn't have been Hollywood Hulk Hogan, like just regular Hulk Hogan versus The Rock, I wouldn't have gave a shit. I wouldn't give a shit now. But it was like the NWO version of Hogan.
Yeah.
It was nostalgia. It was WrestleMania 6 nostalgia for Toronto. Mm-hmm. That's a special match for me in my memory. The crowd, though, you're not wrong that the crowd made that match. Mm-hmm. The next match has one of the most difficult positions on any card in the history of wrestling.
Yeah,
I was not envious of these girls.
Fucking Jazz, man. Every time I see a Jazz match or like Jazz mention, I'm like, fuck, I forgot how good she was.
She was really good.
Mm-hmm. Took on Trish, right?
No, I'm talking about Jazz. I was just going to say, I've never been a huge Trish Stratus fan.
Oh, she was my girlfriend back in the day. She was part of my my puberty.
I was
that's a lot of information.
I was far more into Tori Wilson than Trish Stratus.
Oh, she was too.
I was a big Lita guy. I remember
she was too.
I met Lita at Speed Sport, I think. What did it mean, Speed Sport? The one that they do at the Coliseum?
I met all three of these ladies at an airport once, and they were all super nice. Jazz was incredibly nice. Jazz took a lot of time to talk, and she was super chill. But yeah, way underrated as a wrestler.
Yeah.
Jazz is an amazing... She could hang today in women's wrestling easily. It's unfortunate that she...
Well, she was the NWA champion not long
ago. Yeah.
It's
a couple years ago, maybe.
She's solid.
Yeah.
And Rodney Mack, also fucking badass. You think of the women's division back then, though. Like, they had, like... They appealed to the men, but they also had Jazz, Trish, Lita, and Victoria. Who could like Jacqueline was
great
still
talent.
Kind of around.
Molly
Holly was still
never given the chance though. Like
100%.
The 30-second match, a 2-minute match for the women back then is like a half hour for the men. I remember
6 minutes for this one.
You know why? They're in Toronto and it's Trish.
Right.
And you got to put something between those two matches.
Yeah, right. You have to. And it didn't help because the main event, Chris Jericho versus Triple H for the undisputed WWF title, wrong main event.
If you could have predicted how hot the crowd was going to be for Rock and Hogan, that would have been the main event to have, just because it wouldn't have overshadowed any other match. But this was also back when WWF or WWE, whatever you want to call it, right now. Was huge on the title always being in the main event.
I think at that point in time, the title had not main evented. I think the only times it had not main evented was 1 in 8. And one, the champion was in the main event, which was Hogan, obviously. Trying to think. I think that's the only one, the only two, I should say, that didn't have the title go on last.
But yeah, main event. Triple H, Chris Jericho, with his manager, Stephanie McMahon.
I feel bad for Triple H because he got the main event spot a few times, and a few of those times he got overshadowed. 25 was the same thing. Shawn and Taker stole the show, and then him and Orton have to go out and try and compete with that, which they didn't. Triple H is one of those guys. I think he is a main eventer in the WWE, WWF. I don't think he was ever the guy, like, not even for a specific year. Like, you can say, oh, well, Chris Benoit was the guy in 2004, and you can say this guy was that year, that guy was that year. I don't think Triple H was ever the guy. He was always, any long-term title reign he had was as a heel.
He's the guy now.
Well, he's the guy in charge, but
he said jokes on them. I'm running this shit.
But you know what I mean. He was never like the number one guy. He was probably the number one heel. he did well in factions, but I don't think he was ever like, he didn't have his year where, like, even when he had those long-term title reigns, it's dual branded shows. So you got Lesnar on the other side. Lesnar's the big deal right now, back then, I should say. Or The Rock is on the other show. So there's always something that's stopping Triple H from being number one.
I'd argue that in that 2000 year where he married Stephanie and he had those feuds with The Rock and everybody else was injured,
and Foley,
they'd have been hurting without Triple H.
I agree.
The Rock might have been the star there, but if there's any year that you can make an argument for Triple H that was his year, that was his year. He was the main storylines.
Yeah.
Well, geez, yeah, him and Jericho went right to Judgment Day for that Hell in a Cell match.
I do agree with you that if there is one year, that's the year. But you're competing with The Rock, who was number 2 to Stone Cold. So, but I do agree, like that year, his feud with Foley, at Rumble and at No Way Out.
That was a Royal Rumble 2000. That was a great match. Him and Foley.
Yeah, just fantastic stuff. And then he feuded with The Rock. Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania, probably one of the weakest WrestleManias. I find enjoyment in it, but a lot of people say it's the weakest one because there's not even a singles match in there. I think there's one actually, and it's the women's match.
Isn't that the year that they had the ladder match that borderline turned into a David TLC match though? So that was a special match on that card.
Yeah, that was the match on that card. Like the McMahon in every corner match for the main event. I'm not a fan of the promoter putting himself in, like, just involving himself in the storyline. You can involve yourself, but when you're taking the main event of WrestleMania, nobody should kid themselves. This is the big wrestling show every year. You can say a case for Wrestle Kingdom, sure, but Mania was there first. And when the main storyline is a fatal 4-way match that has a McMahon in every corner, that's kind of lame.
Yep.
So, Connor, X8, any final thoughts on that one?
Love it more every time I watch it.
Yeah. How many times a year do you watch it?
Probably 2 or 3.
2 or 3 a year.
Wow.
Well, for